Again, welcome to one of TPM's many webinars that we have. Today we're going to be focusing on Bluebeam, and the main focus of this one is going to be for performing quantity takeoffs faster with Bluebeam Revu. I am Brody Whitlock. I'm a technical consultant here, technical solutions consultant here at TPM. Here's a little bit of the agenda today, or actually the full agenda here. So obviously we're going to talk about us, and when we say about us, it's mainly going to be talking about Bluebeam. Not sure if you're familiar with TPM, but we can give you a little information about what TPM does, which Annie just alluded to earlier, but we can repath that if we need to. As well, we're going to go over learning objectives. We're going to look at the learning objectives today. The purpose of this webinar is going to be to provide a better understanding of estimation and quantity takeoff features in Revu. As you can see here, we have listed out what you're going to learn as far as creating and sharing custom tool sets, saving new markup tools, calibrating your drawings, leveraging the measurement tools, the markup and measurement data, as well as looking at exporting data into an Excel quantity link. So there's going to be the subjects that we're going to look at today. Bluebeam Revu has increased revenue, reduced costs, and minimized risks for a multitude of projects and people that use Revu on a daily basis. So it does help out with your project efficiency and collaboration in the industry. So some of the big pain points when it comes to Bluebeam, obviously there's a high risk for the stakes with doing anything in the construction industry or the AEC space. If measurements are wrong, of course, the estimate will be wrong, and you will either have one to redo the takeoff and estimate and waste time, or if you don't catch it and send the incorrect estimate, you're going to have a higher cost and liability there. The nice thing is with productivity, it saves you from being, as an estimator, you are able to move a lot faster and take right measurements to complete large volume of bids. So if you're dealing with that kind of information, you will have that. So Bluebeam does also, as you can see with some of the things and the things that you will see as we're doing this presentation, that you're able to leverage the common file format of PDF. Bluebeam Revu also allows you to work across trades and create accurate quantity takeoffs and estimations. There is a versatility of volume measurement within the suite, and it's great for a concrete takeoff. You also have length measurement tools that can facilitate estimations for electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, so we'll see a little bit of that, as well as you can create custom count symbol tools that allow accuracy for counting items, as well as dynamic fill that helps measure a large space quickly and accurately. All right, so Bluebeam has set us up for success. This is a quick overview of what we'll cover today in the demonstration. First, we're going to look at how to best set up your plan set to complete your quantity takeoff. So we're going to see how to set up your interface and profile, how to calibrate your plan set, how to adjust your custom columns in the markups list, and how to leverage the layers in your plan set to differentiate between disciplines or phases. And then after that, we're going to go into the quantity takeoff process. So we'll cover the different measurement tools and how to leverage the tool set for your quantity takeoff. Last but not least, we're going to talk about how to complete your estimation using the data you have added in the markups list and do quantity links. So I'm going to jump over to Bluebeam. So we're going to get to see Bluebeam in action. Let me pull that up for you guys. All right, so here is our plan that we're going to pretty much get to know a little bit as we go through this webinar. So do get accustomed to it just a tad. And first, what we're going to look at is our profile setting to take off, so that way you have the tools you need. And currently, if you look at the interface, it may be different from what you use within your normal daily practice of Bluebeam. And this is one of the profiles that comes preset. So I'm going to go to my review menu. I'm going to look at my profiles. And in this flyout here, you see that there are a multitude of options. The top 4 are the ones that come standard within Bluebeam. And as you can see, next to quantity takeoff, there is a check mark. So that is the profile that Bluebeam has created that will hopefully help ease when it comes to doing quantity takeoffs within Bluebeam. You also have the ability down here as far as to your saved profile and managed profile. You do, through managed profiles, have the ability to share via exporting and as well as uploading any profiles that have been shared with you in Bluebeam. Now, one thing you'll notice, I'm going to switch over to my thumbnails, is that Bluebeam now in 2019 will show you the scale setting page. And I will go through that process of adding or setting a scale to these pages, which it already is set here. However, I will show you guys how to calibrate that. So without further ado, I'm going to move over to my calibration tool here. And the one nice thing about Bluebeam 2019 as well is that Bluebeam 2019, when you get ready to say do a measurement, if there was not a scale set, it will prompt you to set a scale. Now, the other thing is if there is a scale already set, you can do one of 2 methods to get that to show up. You can select that calibration button here. Again, we are on that takeoff or quantity takeoff profile, and it will give you this prompt here. You have the ability to select 2 points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over really quick to a page that I have some measurements on so you guys can see exactly how that calibrate works. So selecting that calibrate, it's telling me to select 2 points of a known dimension. So I'm going to select these 2 guys here. And once I hit OK, it's going to give me my crosshair. And I'm going to hold down shift just to get a straight line and snap to that other item. And as you can see right now, it's showing us that the scale, we can either choose preset or custom. So if you have like a set scale on the drawing already, you can go ahead and just select one of the presets, which Bluebeam does a really good job of trying to cover all of those scales for you. Or in this case, since we don't have that, we're going to have to tell it that this space on this drawing is 30 feet. So let's go ahead and say 30 feet. You can change the precision here, so you can decrease or increase the number or the fractions that will show up. If you would like, you can go to obviously a whole number down to 1/32. And you can tell it to do all pages, or you can do just the current page. So for this case, because we do have a mix of scales, we're going to just do this for this page. And so we're going to apply the scale. And if we go back to our thumbnails, you can see how that has changed to give us what we know 3.7 inches is on the PDF. We know that that is about 30 feet. All right, so we're going to move forward and we're going to take a look at our custom columns here. You have the ability to create a multitude of columns within Bluebeam. Now, these columns are going to be under your markups list. That markups list can be found normally at the bottom of your Bluebeam interface. And so to expand that, we will select that button there. And then we will hit the drop down under markups list, go over to columns. And as you can see, there's a long list of columns here, but you will see that down, if you select manage columns, you can actually go in and see what will actually be displayed on that list. So if it has a check mark next to it, it will show up on that list that we just saw. If it does not, it will be hidden. It won't be erased. It'll still be there. You just have to go back in and check it. But what we're going to take a look at right now is looking at the custom columns. Now, before this webinar, I went ahead and created one custom column, and that custom column is called, let me go back, it's called a choice column. And so just like we know the definition of choice, choosing between more than one option, I have created that for flooring. So for instance, right now, the name of that column is going to be flooring. So you can see it here as well because it is already active. And then we've chose the type of that column to be choice. So that way I can have this list of items here, which I've added. If you need to add additional ones, you can select add and say, for instance, we will do marble. And then we will tell it that the subject of that is flooring. And I spelled flooring all wrong. and we will say that flooring plus installation is probably about $50 square foot. And let me go back and modify these guys to read properly. Alright, so we are all good there, and we're going to hit OK, and then we're going to go in and create another column, which is going to be our cost column. So I'm just going to name it cost, and we're going to create a formula column, which gives us the ability to use expressions just like you do in Excel. You have that ability to put formulas in here that will give you some estimations, some quick ways of seeing what your cost may be per square foot or whatever number you would like. So our expression, we know that we're going to take our flooring and then we're going to multiply it by our area. So that's going to give us our cost, that number that we put in for the flooring, times the area that's in there. And we can tell it that we want it to show up as currency. And as you can see, you have multiple options here as far as to different currency symbols if you're working in another country. And we can say OK, and then we're going to hit OK again. And now our cost and flooring columns are here on the right side. Now we're going to go back to that as we get ready to do some markups to show how that will be effective or how that will be affected. But first, one thing we're going to take a look at is our layers. So within Bluebeam, you do have the ability to use layers. This can be per discipline. This can be per design phase if you would like. I went ahead and set up some just as an example. You do have the option here, of course, at the top to add a new layer. You can do it before or after any selected item. And if we select, say, electrical, then we can also add a child. So that way that layer acts just like the parent as far as to what options you have selected over here. Let me expand that so you guys can see, but you do have the ability to add things to layers and have it automatically lock if those items are checked. You can have them print or not print, and you also have the option to export or not export. So sometimes this is beneficial if you have items that you don't want to share out to the project team and you just want to keep those internal. You can make sure that those are on layers that don't print or export. So we're going to keep going forward. Now that we've looked at layers just a little bit, and I will highlight that as we're going through our markups. One thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our measurement tools. So as we listed, we're going to take a look at count, and I'm going to show you guys how to create a custom count tool. We're going to look at length, poly length, dynamic fill, the rise and drop, as well as a volume measurement. So first, what I want to do is we're going to do a count symbol. So you have the ability to create a count from your toolbar, which I'm opening up this properties just so you see your options as far as to the ones that are already created within Bluebeam. But you would select that item there, and then you can go and tell it whether you want it to be a check mark, a triangle, a square, diamond, or circle, as well as you do have the ability to create a custom count as well. So if we select this guy by the tool, by the toolbox, the drop down, you do have the ability to select one of those items that is listed. But if you don't see anything on the list that is for your liking or for your industry, you can go in and create those. And we're going to do that here in a second. So I'm going to select my cloud tool just to give us a nice example. And I'm just going to go in and place a cloud here. And once that cloud is placed, one thing I always recommend, and I actually did a little video on this when I was for our 4-Minute Friday, so it does explain how to do this. But if you want it to be a specific color and have a specific fill prior to creating it as a count, you have to do that before you make it a count. So let's go in and just change. We're going to change that to orange. We're going to make a fill here of orange as well. And maybe we'll add a hatch pattern, and we're going to make that hatch pattern white. All right. So now what we'll need to do, let me go ahead and open up this tool chest here, is we're going to need to add this guy by right-clicking and we're going to add it to our tool chest. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to general measurements, so that way that cloud is there. Once that cloud is placed, you can right click on that cloud within your toolbox and you can tell it to create a count. So now this is now a count measurement. And so if we place 3 of those guys, and I'm going to pull up my markups list here, you can see that our count is 3. It's not counting that original one that we had to create to add it to the tool chest, but that's the way you'll go about creating a custom count element within Bluebeam. You have to create it first, add it to your tool chest, right click on it while it's in the tool chest, and then create a count from that. The other nice thing about Bluebeam, like I was saying with the profiles, is you actually have the ability to export and share your toolboxes with anyone. So if you're, say, working with another discipline that does not have the tool set that you have and they would like it, you can right click on the sprocket here, or left click on the sprocket, I'm sorry, and you can say export, and then you have the ability to save it as well, which it normally will prompt you to save before you export. And then a way to retrieve that is you will go to the drop down for tool chest, select manage tools, and then you will click the import, or that person that you're sending it to will select that import option. We're going to take a look at our length and poly length, as well as dynamic fill, rise and drop, and volume. Let me switch over to another plan really quick. We're going to go over to our plumbing, and what I'm going to do is we're going to make sure that this guy is calibrated to the way we need it. So let's go in and calibrate again just to verify. And we can see that that's not correct. So we're going to change that to 30 feet and we're going to tell it to apply scale. So now we are working with the right measurements here. So you have multiple ways. You have your length measurement, which is your simple point to point. If you hold down shift, you can get a straight line, whether it be 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or obviously 0, you have that option when you hold the shift key. So that's going to be our length measurement. Now we're going to take a look at our poly length. As far as the poly length goes, and this is where we're actually going to add a drop, so our rise for a poly length measurement. So let me trace this here. And I'm going to go all the way. We're just going to cut it short just about there. All right, so now you guys see that we do have that poly length. And the nice thing is the poly length gives you the sections or the segments, as well as it gives you the total of that run. If we right click on this, I will tell it to split, so that way I can add a drop to this item here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this as it's already selected, and then I'm going to open up my measurements flyout here, and you can see you have the ability within that to add a rise and drop to it. And probably a better example will be this guy, just because it is a little bit farther spaced out. Give me 1 second, let me get back to that. All right, so yeah, if we take a look at this item here and then go back to our measurements, let's add a rise and drop. Let's say overall it will drop 3 inches. So we'll do 0 space 3. And now we know that the length is changed, obviously, and we do have a rise and drop of 3 inches over the span of the distance there. So that's the way that you'll look at rise and drop within Bluebeam. Switching back to our main floor plan, we're going to take a look at dynamic fill. And with dynamic fill, it is going to be this option here. We're going to select that, and it's going to bring up the template or the flyout for dynamic fill. So you have all your options up here. You can create a border. You can also enable the filling capabilities. You can clear all of your items, such as your fill and your boundaries, if you made a mistake. Well, as the nice thing to have open sometimes is going to be the settings for your dynamic fill. So you have the ability to control your boundary size, your fill size, and your fill speed, as well as you have the option to change your edge sensitivity. We're just going to take the perimeter of one of these rooms, but as you can see that you can create spaces. You also have the ability for polygon markups, area measurements, polylink measurements, perimeter, and volumetric measurements as well. So what we're going to do is let's go in here and color that in with our dynamic fill. And then we're going to tell it that, hey, we want to take a measurement, an area measurement of this area as well. Let's do this office. So what we're going to do, since we created those custom columns, we're going to make sure that all of our open offices have an LVT flooring. So I'm going to show you guys how to switch that to LVT as well. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to tell it to apply. And now it's going to give us, if we zoom in, it's going to give us the square footage of those areas as we've chosen for that to show up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each of those guys, holding down the shift key to have all those items highlighted. And then we're going to go in and actually change those guys, the flooring or the material, so that way we can get our custom column to be active. So I'm going to open up our settings here for this, and we're going to tell it, remember, as we made a subject, we called it flooring. So now what that does after adding that subject is it opens up the option to change our flooring material. And so we're going to tell it LVT, since this is going to be a high use space. And then if we open up our markups list, let me minimize that to kind of clear some clutter, you're going to see that in our list here, we have our flooring cost, and it's going to multiply the 4.5 by the 943 and other numbers here and give us a total cost per room, how much it would be for that material plus installation. So this is a way to get you a quick markup or get you a quick takeoff to understand the cost implications of project as you're working through it. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at our volume measurement as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my measurement tool here, and we're going to select our volume now that we have all these rooms selected. Let me go back to that. All right, so going back to our measurements here, we're going to take a look at our volume measurement, which is selected. And we're just going to take a measurement of, say, this conference room. So one thing that you can do while you're taking your volume measurement is you can go ahead and put in the depth, so say the height of your walls. For instance, we'll say that this building has 10-foot ceilings, so we're going to say 10 feet. You can change the area as well as you can change the volume measurement by hitting the drop downs. And you can tell it whether you want to do cubic inches down to cubic kilometers. And with that selected, we're just going to do our drag, click and drag. And as you can see, let me change that to a more legible, let me add a fill to it. So as you can see, it's giving us that volumetric measurement of that room with a 10-foot depth. So it's taking and doing that math for you. So this is a good understanding of volume, even though it is a 2D PDF. Now, we have already covered our tool sets and looking at that and how you share those items. As you can see with our recent tools, any item that we have created has shown up here, so that's nice. You can also add those guys if you right click on them. You can add those properties to my tools. You can also just drag those items into any other toolbox that you already have created. So that's another convenient factor that Bluebeam has created for us. Moving along, we're going to take a look at that markups list. And if you have not done this before, you do have the ability to export your markups list in a multitude of ways. You have the ability to create a CSV and XML format, so for your Excel files, as well as you have the ability to do a PDF option. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to roll back over to our presentation just to check and make sure we're on track. And then we're going to take a look at quantity linking, which is something that can be beneficial within Bluebeam for those that are doing estimation, as well as do know that it is a extreme function. So if you do not have Bluebeam Revu Extreme, quantity link will not be available to you. So let's switch back over. So quantity link, previous workflow or without Bluebeam Extreme, you would have to do your takeoff, create your summary, enter that information into Excel and then calculate your prices. With Quantity Link, you will skip a lot of those action items and just go from takeoff to calculated price. So in 2016 Revu and earlier versions, that's what you would have to do with the previous workflow. And again, now with 2017 and up, you do have the ability with the Extreme to do the new workflow. So let's switch on back. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this guy out because it is helpful to have that saved somewhere on your machine. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up Excel, which I have on another screen. So I'm going to bring that guy in. And say, for instance, we had our flooring options and we had LVT. Within Bluebeam, or within Excel, you can right click on a blank cell and you have this ability to do a quantity link. So we will say create, and then we're going to go add that file. So I know that my file is in my Bluebeam training folder, and I'm going to select that, and now it's going to populate. And then I'm going to say OK. Now I want to get the total area of our subject of flooring. And then I'm going to break it down into the type of flooring and say LVT. If we had other options, they would be listed under this as well. And then I'm going to tell it OK. So now you can see that that's going to give us our total. And let me switch back over to Bluebeam. And you can see that our total here is 3,802. If I were to go in and manipulate this border just a little bit here, and that number changes to 3970, we can go back to, with Quantity Link, it's keeping that live connection there, so you will see that that automatically changes for you. This saves a lot of hassle and potential errors as far as having to go back and forward and correct numbers on either your Bluebeam or your Excel file. All right, so now that you've seen how Quantity Link has happened, let's do a really quick recap before we close for today. So some of the things that we covered, of course, are going to be layers. We also looked at our calibration options within Bluebeam. We have also taken a look at adding a rise and drop to a poly length measurement. We've looked at adding items to a tool set as well as creating a custom count. And last but not least, we looked at our markups list and how you can export that, as well as our quantity link, which we just went over. Thank you for watching another TPM webinar featuring Bluebeam. You can follow us on our YouTube channel, as well as look for more stuff on our blog posts at tpm.com.